Kelly Vaughn, and this is Inside Indy. You know, the cost of a higher education is skyrocketing, but we have some solutions for you, a way to help you begin saving for college. And joining us is Troy Montigney. He is the Executive Director of College Choice 529. Welcome to Inside Indy.
Thanks, Kelly. Pleasure to be here today.
Thank you for coming in. I'm trying to figure out what the 529 part is. I like the name of this, College Choice 529. Can you tell us what the numbers mean and tell us about the savings program?
Absolutely. So it's named 529 because it refers to the section of the federal tax code, kind of like your 401k you might save in for retirement is section 401. And 529 is section 529. It's really meant to be an affordable, flexible, easy to use, tax advantage way for parents, grandparents, anyone else really, to save for post-secondary education expenses of a loved one, like a child, a grandchild, even themselves if they want to go back to school.
Okay, so how does it work? How do we make it happen?
So very easy to use. Here in Indiana, the College Choice 529 plans are administered by state government, and someone can enroll in the College Choice 529 direct savings plan in about 10 minutes with a minimum contribution of $10 at collegechoicedirect.com. From there, they can contribute at any time with a check or one-time or recurring electronic funds transfer. A lot of employers even let you contribute directly out of your paycheck after taxes. And we're really trying to make sure people understand that a 529 plan is the most tax advantage way to save for college.
Okay, now why is that? How will it help me out on my taxes?
So there's actually 3 tax advantages. The first of which is a tax-deferred earning status. So put money into your account. Depending on how you invest it, you'll get a certain rate of earnings for the lifetime that you're invested in the account, and all earnings are tax-deferred, meaning you don't pay taxes on them until later on. But there's actually a fun catch there that they actually become tax-free as long as the money is withdrawn to pay for qualified education expenses. Last but not least, most states around the country have passed state tax incentives to encourage residents and taxpayers of those states to choose the state's home plan. And in this case, people are really lucky to be Indiana residents because we actually have the most generous tax incentive in the country. It's a 20% state tax credit worth up to $1,000 a year. So each contributor that puts in $5,000 to a loved one's account could get a $1,000 tax credit back on next year's tax return.
Wow.
In addition to those long-term tax benefits.
Wow, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Okay, so do you think is the #1 reason people don't get around to doing something like this, to saving for that grandchild's college education?
Well, there's obviously a couple reasons, of course, and I think the biggest reason I hear when I'm out talking to people here in the Indianapolis area and around the rest of the state is they just don't know where to start. They feel overwhelmed. Paying for college might get lost in the shuffle of other ongoing expenses like their mortgage or their housing, or most importantly, the #1 long-term savings need of everyone, which is saving for retirement. And so people just don't get around to pre-funding a loved one's, a child or grandchild's post-secondary education. Okay. But thankfully, that's what we're trying to do, especially at this time of year as we head into College Savings Month, is to share information about College Choice 529 to let people know that there is an option with a pretty low barrier to entry, only a $10 minimum contribution, and that has a really powerful ability to help them save in a tax advantage fashion over a long period of time. And then they also tend to think, I'll get there later on and I'll just borrow money for it, right? That's the same thing as saving now. Unfortunately, with private student loan interest rates of up to 7% on some loans, you can lose out on many, many thousands of dollars in just an interest paying back student loans over time.
Okay, now you mentioned the word interest. So is there any interest gained on the savings of the money that's in that account?
There can be, and I should say there most often is. It really depends on the actual investment option that someone uses when they get into our program. In the direct plan, about 70% of our account owners use what's called an age-based portfolio, which means if you start saving for a little baby, the money's going to be invested very aggressively early on, trying to maximize your earnings and return on your investment for a few years before it gradually shifts to a more conservative investment mix as the beneficiary nears college age. For instance, a 17-year-old who's heading off to college next year, he or she and his or her parents really need to know how much money is going to be there for them to use when it comes time to pay for their qualified education expenses. So at that point, it's invested much less aggressively. You've kind of locked in a certain degree of earnings, and you know how much you're going to be able to use when it's time to pay for education.
Okay, because I would think, how do you predict what it's going to cost to go to college 20 years from now? And do you have a formula for that?
So it is very difficult to predict, quite frankly, because all different types of schools have different levels of expenses. You know, if you go to a large in-state public school, generally going to be less expensive, at least in terms of sticker price, than a private four-year college. However, private four-year colleges tend to offer really strong merit-based aid and institutional aid that can sometimes make the bottom line cost a little bit more advantageous depending on the situation the child or beneficiary is in. So really the important thing is, I think, for people to save as much as possible, starting as early as possible and as often as possible, and don't let up. Because they have options if they oversave. For instance, 529 plans can be used for graduate school programs. So if that beneficiary gets through their undergraduate years and decides they want to get an MBA or go to law school or become a doctor or anything else you need continuing education for, they can repurpose it towards that. You can also change the beneficiary on an account. If you oversave for an oldest child or oldest grandchild, can change the beneficiary to a younger sibling, a younger grandchild, a younger niece or nephew, and then they can use the money for their college education.
I could see that being a great advantage. Consider sometimes the kids don't always cooperate the way you'd like them to. Because say you're saving for a child and, you know, she's 3, and then when she's 18, she has no interest in that. Or maybe she's joined a rock band and she's going across the country. So what do you do with those funds?
That is a great question, and we get asked that a lot. And you have a couple different options if the original beneficiary on the account decides not to go to college. First one is obviously you can leave the money sitting in the account until a later date, because sometimes their plans may change after a year or two in the real world and decide, this isn't so great out here. Music career, like you talked about, isn't working out, so I need to go back and get some sort of credential to advance my career. You can change the beneficiary to the other family member, like I mentioned. Last case scenario, if there's no one that's going to use it, you can take an unqualified withdrawal and close an account, in which case the earnings portion only would be taxed like regular income and face a 10% federal penalty. But the thing to remember is the money that goes into this account is post-tax dollars, and you're never going to, you wouldn't lose out on your principal contributions you had made in an instance like that. Just the earnings portion only would be taxed because they haven't been taxed before.
Okay, okay. So why save with the College Choice 529 as opposed to just, you know, putting the money in my local bank?
So again, it is all of those tax advantages I mentioned earlier. Okay. The federal government and our state law clarifies that earnings on 529 plans are tax deferred, and then expenses, when you take the money out to pay for expenses, those with qualified withdrawals become tax-free. Then you get the 20% tax credit. So for instance, if someone has $5,000 just sitting in a bank account right now that they are planning to use for a child or grandchild's education someday, they could put that into a college choice account tomorrow and most likely qualify for a $1,000 tax credit on next year's return. Technically money that then, if it came back in the form of a refund following their tax return, could put right back into the 529 account and earn a refund on the year after that's return. So it just has a tremendous potential not only to experience tax advantage saving, but also, depending on which investment options you select, when you decide to invest, to really generate a strong return compared to a smaller one you might get in a regular checking or savings account.
Okay, okay. Now what about in the event of an emergency? Are you able to tap into those dollars if you had to? Or say the child that you had, something happened and you even hate to say it, suggest something tragically happening, but what if you just don't plan to use that money for an education?
Sure. So kind of like some of the scenarios we've been talking about before, can always take a non-qualified withdrawal if needed, which happens very seldomly in our plan. In the event you mentioned, heaven forbid, if there's a disability or death of the beneficiary on the account and there isn't another beneficiary to use the account for, you're actually exempt from that 10% federal penalty. So you'd still pay taxes on the earnings, but wouldn't pay the 10% penalty. And then again, principal contributions, your money that you put in, you're always going to get back scot-free without those taxes and earnings.
Okay. Now, what if your child decides to go to the University of Washington in Seattle? So how do those dollars that are vested in Indiana, can they be applied to an out-of-state institution?
They absolutely can, and I'm happy you asked, because this is another misconception about 529 plans and the college choice program in particular. While this is Indiana's program primarily intended for Hoosiers to save in accounts, it can be used at any eligible school in the country. Gonna kind of give you an exhaustive list here, but just to cover it: in-state, out-of-state, 2-year, 4-year, public, private, undergraduate, graduate, traditional college or university experience, and even a lot of career and vocational or technical training schools are all eligible institutions where you can use 529 savings. And if anyone has a specific question about a particular school, maybe kind of a different educational experience than they thought their child or grandchild was going to have, the U.S. Department of Education's FAFSA website maintains a really exhaustive list of the eligible institutions.
Okay. So let's go over the details, how someone can be a part of this, can start saving.
The easiest way to start saving on their own is to go to www.collegechoicedirect.com. That's collegechoicedirect.com. And they'll need information about both the account owner and beneficiary, dates of birth, social security numbers, things of that nature. And it's a pretty simple account enrollment process. If you've ever used the internet before, particularly for an online banking account or something like that, it's pretty straightforward. Can have it set up in about 10 or 15 minutes time. And again, it only takes a minimum of a $10 contribution to open the account, and any ensuing time they want to contribute, it's $10 as well. We also have tools that will let them enlist other family members and friends in helping save in the account if they want. A U-Gift functionality that lets parents, for instance, send an email or a printed invitation to grandparents to also contribute to the account. And I should note that third-party gift contributors are eligible for those same tax advantages, including the 20% state tax credit.
Okay, and very quickly, we're almost out of time. Is there a recommended amount of a person's income that you would recommend that they save for a college education?
There's not. I can't really speculate based on someone's individual situation. All different income levels, different levels of need for different educational experiences. But the example we use is that if someone commits to saving $100 a month when a baby is born, for 18 years before they go to college, they'll have set aside $21,000 of their own money. And if they earned a 5% rate of return on their investments, that account would actually grow to $35,000. So tremendous potential to save a lot over time and also to maximize their savings through the power of returns on their investments and compounding interest.
Okay, Troy Montigney, Executive Director of College Choice 529. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you again, Kelly.
On Inside Indy, and we'll be back after this.
Last year, Habitat for Missions flipped houses to build a trade school in Uganda for orphans, to expand another school in India for little girls that were at risk of industrial or sexual slavery. Right now, we are in the process of doing a build specifically for a group called Beyond the Storm, a disaster relief organization here in the U.S. We have in the past raised money for missionary doctors, for Bible college professors, for church planters on every continent of the world except Antarctica, and we're ready to do more. We've had inquiries from missionaries in Russia just recently, another one serving in Zambia. And all we're doing is looking for more homes that we can put our tradesmen to work to renovate them, to sell those homes so that we can continue to donate money to Christian Mission. So if you're interested in selling a house, please contact us.
Well, Thomas, you've got pre-diabetes. But with more exercise and a change in diet, it can be reversed.
I've tried exercising. It just makes me hungry for bacon.
I love bacon, too. And who really likes to exercise?
Not me.
Me neither.
Nobody. So we're good?
What? Oh, you still have pre-diabetes. Big time.
When I was in foster care, I never knew when I would have to move. So I always had my suitcase ready to go. Then one day, I was adopted. My new parents opened their hearts and home to me. My parents cook my favorite breakfast for me every morning. My parents take me on trips I never thought I would go on. They gave me a home and an even better reason to use that suitcase. My parents aren't perfect, but they're perfect for me.
And we're back here on Inside Indy and want to talk about the topic of sex trafficking and really beyond when it comes to issues that concern women, and would like to share with you a book that I have in my hand called Women Like Us, Together Changing the World, Real Stories, Real Strategies. And the author of the book is Linda Rendleman, who you all know here in Indianapolis, who has led many charges for women in our community. And the one you did particularly with women, Indy Women Connect?
Indy Women Connect, and then Business Women Connect. A couple
yes.
years later, we changed that name. But we did a lot of things here for women. Eventually, after my first Women Like Us book, we went to be an actual charity, 501c3, and that's the
Awesome.
Women Like Us Foundation. Yeah.
So the inspiration behind the book and what we can expect in this particular book.
Sure. Happy to talk about it. So that's my third book, in the Women Like Us book series. And all of them have stories of women and empowering stories of women that have really done things. And it's so important that I feel that they tell their stories so other women like you, like me, pardon me, women like us, can read their stories and learn and be motivated and inspired by some fabulous women that I have met along the way. And at the bottom line, really, or at the end of the day, is that each of the books and our upcoming documentary, it all fits together with the Women Like Us Foundation, is really about inspiring women, and really anyone who reads it, that you can make a difference in the world. You can do something simple like hold the hand of a child, going across the street, or actually something big like a big foundation, or fighting sex trafficking, or helping the homeless on whatever level that you want to. So that's the whole idea behind the book series, also our upcoming documentary, as well as the Women Like Us Foundation in general.
Okay, it says real stories, real strategies. Share a story in the book that would inspire us, one that you like in particular.
Oh, I have met so many amazing women, but I'll share with you one that is about sex trafficking, since that's our campaign right now. And there's a whole section in the book on sex trafficking in particular. And I'd have to share the story of a gal whose name I won't give you, who was a victim of familial sex trafficking. And what that means, and you don't think about it too often, but not only is sex trafficking where a stranger comes and meets a girl and all of a sudden she goes through this process with him, and it can be boys as well, and be a victim of sex trafficking, but sex trafficking can also happen within families. And in this particular story in the book, the woman tells her story about how as young as 7 years old, her uncle started sexually abusing her and eventually trafficking her and even selling her on the web and having sexual acts right on for people that were watching on the other side of the screen. So it was really, and to this day, she's rescued. She has a life. She has a job. She has a child. But yet to this day, because it was such an incredible thing that happens to girls, to boys, to whomever when they're sex trafficked, she will always be in therapy. It really, truly, she is an injured person. That said, she started her own charity to help people to understand and to help victims of sex trafficking.
Wow.
So that's her story is really quite amazing, and she shares portions and parts of it in the book that you're holding in your hand.
So in the book, it's various stories. So do you tell their stories, or do you allow them to tell their stories, or is it a combination?
No, actually, well, it was a little bit of a combination, not on purpose, but so there are 20 women that have contributed to this book.
Okay.
And some of them, I interviewed them and wrote the story for them. Okay. And some of them, they contributed their story and we just edited it and worked it into the book. And along with that, quite honestly, there's stories, pieces of my own story and the things that I have learned in the areas that we cover with the foundation. So there's sex trafficking section, there's one on homelessness, education, and then we do some amazing work in Kenya. That's our one global initiative is Kenya, and so the rest of it is the United States.
Okay, which is the subject of your cover of the book? Okay, so who are we seeing here on the cover? Is that your...
That's Kat, yeah.
That's Kat Sadler.
That's my daughter, Kat, and she was in Kenya with me, and we had a photographer, and it was really interesting because that gal right there, who is a Maasai tribal person, and she actually we were working with the kids, we were working with the women, and Kat saw this beautifully dressed Maasai girl, and so she grabbed her hand and said, "Come and stand next to me." And the photographer shot that photo, and it was just perfect. It said so much that we use it not only for the book cover, but also for the foundation.
It's very
and
powerful.
The documentary, yeah.
In the sense of that women like us, that we're all the same, no matter where we are and how different we are, or the way we appear. And of course, Kat is just gorgeous. I mean, it's just beautiful, and I love she's just both of them just beautiful. It's just the color and everything is just absolutely gorgeous.
Thank you. You know, Kelly, I like to say that as women, our passions are shared. Our stories may be different. Our stories are singular, but we all share the commonality through our passions, and that is really truly about giving back, about being collaborative, of understanding the world from the woman's point of view through all of our innate abilities that we have as women. And that's why, for me, selecting the name Women Like Us for our work just fits.
I want to talk about the documentary, so tell us about that.
Oh, happy to. Almost 4 years to get it done.
Wow.
Yeah, but we're putting the finishing touches on it right now. Since, actually, I need to back up because last spring we were selected by the Los Angeles Women's International Film Festival as one of their key films. And we did show the documentary at LA Live in Los Angeles to a packed crowd. It was sold out. And it was a great stepping stone for us because when you work on something for so long to realize that it really does move people. And we just got a wonderful reception for that. Wow. We're doing some other things with it and putting it at a couple other film festivals. But then we're going to open it up and really take it to the public. And I'm very excited because early part of next year, we will be bringing the documentary to Indianapolis and doing a big event, a fundraiser, and I'm so excited because I've always believed in all the women here and the work that they do. So I'm hoping we can just rally a lot of them to come and see the film and just have a really good discussion about women's work here in the city. The focus of the film is very similar to the book and very similar to our mission, really about you can do it. You can do it. You want to make a difference, you can do it. It doesn't have to be big. It can be on any level that you want to do it. But when you see the amazing stories of these women in the film, you will just really, hopefully, it'll really motivate you to want to give back as well. And sometimes I think we all want to do that, but it's like how, you know?
Right, yeah, how do we get started?
And does it have to be big or can it be small? It really doesn't matter. So we're really, really excited about the documentary because the funds from that documentary will help us do what we do, which is fund women's work in the world.
Okay, and where can we get the book, Women Like Us?
Well, you can certainly go to our website, womenlikeusfoundation.org. The IBJ published it, so you can also get it from
nice.
right in here. Yes, they're the best.
Good old Mickey
Indianapolis-
Maurer.
Yes,
Give him
exactly.
his
Pat
props.
Kiefner, all the great people at the IBJ. They've just been, I've loved working with them. So the Indianapolis Business Journal, and of course Amazon.
Okay.
We're just getting ready to put it on ebook, so it'll be on Kindle probably in the
Nice.
next 30 days as well.
Okay.
So yeah, and if anyone wants, I'm always open to coming and speaking and
Lovely.
talking about the empowerment of women and the things that we do as well. So
Okay.
it's an exciting time.
I want to acknowledge your daughter, Kat Sadler. People know her originally from Fox 59
Right, yeah.
News, but she's now out in LA.
She's now out in Los Angeles, and she is a host for E! News. And
I
right
get
now
it.
doing 2 shows, The Daily Pop on E! News, that's like noonish, and then also E! News in the evening. So she's a busy girl right now. I'm
Okay.
proud of her. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and as you should be. And oh
Thank
gosh,
you.
and I know you are the inspiration behind her. You've had your own show, you've had your own publications, you do so much, and just what a great role model, not only for your daughter Kat, but for all of us.
Well, thank you,
So-
but she is the consummate professional for sure. So she's doing
I
well.
love it. I love it. Linda Rendleman, thanks so much for joining us
Thank you.
on
Thanks for
Inside
having
Indy.
me.
And please check out her book, buy her book, Women Like Us. I'm your host, Kelly Vaughn. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
$150 over $90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
Your blood pressure numbers could change your life. Lowering them could save you from having a stroke. If you've stopped your treatment plan, restart it or talk to your doctor about creating one that works better for you. Start taking the right steps at manageyourbp.org.
Now I'm, trying to get better, stronger than ever.
Bye, Janet. It's nice seeing you again. You look good, girl. Just let me know what I can do to help.
Well, to help me, she'd have to help every day. Every hour, every ouch, every time my wife calls for help. I mean, maybe she could help me make her lunch. But the crust, all the crust has to be cut off the corners. She could help me run to the doctor for the 5th time this week. Help me with the specialist and the second opinions and the painful paperwork of our paperwork. Help me deal with how hard it is seeing my wife's name on so much paperwork. But this is on me. I'm the only one who can do this, like this, for her. Besides,
Take care.
we will. Janet doesn't like her cooking anyway.
Find support for your strength. Visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community.